I'm Michael Mosley, and I served 2 years of national service between 4th of October 1967 to 4th of October 1969. My role, although I was posted to Vietnam to the civil aid group which I volunteered for, I ended up as a truck driver with 2 Transport Platoon at Vung Tau, and was in that unit until I came home 11 months and 3 weeks later. It does mean a lot. The term veteran these days doesn't have the same public understanding as it might have done in previous years, because you don't have to have served overseas to be a veteran. But so I take a lot of pride in being a veteran and being part of a group of fellow veterans. It's very important. It would have been when our unit, or part of our unit, was posted to a place called Long Bin during the Tet Offensive of 1969, and I'd just been promoted to Lance Corporal. So I was in charge of small convoys which resupplied the Australian fire support bases that had been set up north of Saigon to protect Saigon. So we would spend quite a bit of time with ammunition resupplying the fire support bases, and I found myself as a Lance Corporal in charge of these small convoys and the responsibility that entailed. And up until that point in my life, I'd never had any form of leadership or any role like that at all. So this was pretty daunting, and what actually used to haunt me was the fact that at any particular time, not that it happened, but if we had been ambushed or ran over mines, then it would have been my responsibility to determine how we reacted to a situation like that, for which I'd had, and none of us in transport had any training to speak of, and I certainly had no experience in that, and that actually did haunt me for quite a number of years as to how I might have reacted had we ended up being ambushed or running over mines and things like that. In hindsight, it was a huge responsibility for which I was totally and utterly unprepared. But you just have to do and hope for the best. So subsequent to, our detachment had something like 3 months in and around Long Bin supplying the Australian fire support bases, and when we came back to base at Vung Tau, I was offered another promotion to Corporal, and the job of running the transport office as Transport NCO. And I suddenly found myself in a very powerful day-to-day position, which was something I'd never had that degree of responsibility before in my life. And I sort of said to myself, I had a choice in some ways with it. What do I do with this power? And I decided that it would be power that I would use for the benefit of everybody else as best as possible, and to make the unit run as efficiently as it could. And in a couple of cases, I had to break through some little bands of privilege that had sort of festered in the unit, and I did away with all that and made it a more egalitarian operation, platoon, as far as running the platoon's concerned. I gave everybody a fair go. I had to deal with a couple of the older regular NCOs who were really quite understandably ropeable that I got a job like that and they didn't. So that was always a tension to deal with. But at the end of the day, even though I had 2 stripes on my shoulders, I never really issued an order. I never really had to. The platoon ended up running very efficiently, and it was a good place to be. Morale was very good. So I found out a lot about myself, that if I hadn't have been in Vietnam and hadn't been in that role, I never would have known about myself. So I found elements of who I was that hitherto had never come to the surface. So that was a major turning point in my life. Oh yes, like a lot of us, I had a mental and physical breakdown in my early 50s, PTSD, and had to give up work. And that was a huge adjustment. That it was 2 or 3 years of sort of being supported and by my family, my wife in particular. I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Nolene, and a very common story. But anyway, we got through that, and I now find myself, I'm a volunteer at the Heidelberg Repatriation Hospital, part of which is spending time in Ward 17, which is sort of like the PTSD ward at the Repat for the last 15 years. And we've been working with the staff, patients in the ward, and we go down there, a couple of us go down there and just chat with the patients and the staff and see how we can help them. This is particularly with the younger veterans and police who are patients there. So we've got a bond in that the younger veterans can talk to us because they know we've been suffering the same thing that they're going through. So that's my sort of experience of my own mental sort of condition, if you like, has led to a broader ministry. Because I was also became an Anglican lay minister. I'm retired now, but so PTSD for me led on to those sorts of new areas. I ceased being Mike from marketing and became Michael, the lay minister and veteran. Well, it's in my case, when I came back from Vietnam, all the nerves, all the adrenaline, all the cortisols, they were pounding away, and they never stopped. I mean, the last thing anybody said to me when I left the army was, just forget about it, mate, and get on with your life. All well and good, but our bodies retain the memories of those 12 months or however long it was, and gradually over time. So when I went to sort of meetings and went to visit customers, I was back in that convoy with all the adrenaline surging through. And after a while, when I turned 50, I just hit the wall. And the body basically said, sorry, mate, we can't continue on and neither can you. It's time to give it away. And that was a very common story for Vietnam veterans of hitting the wall in our 50s. And alcohol was, of course, another major factor in all that. Whereas, interestingly enough, the younger veterans, because of the increased awareness of PTSD and professionals being aware, that they're tending quite often to hit the wall earlier than we did. Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's a common experience. So we all, and that's one way in which we all support each other because we've all gone through the same issues. And it's still fair to say, I mean, I still wake up at nights and I'm back in my Jeep with a radio that never worked, worrying about being in a next ambush. You know, those sorts of things. My body still remembers waiting for the bullet to hit. So those things don't go away. What our psychiatrist would say is you don't relive them. You just try to, if you remember rather than relive it, sorry, is what I'm trying to say. But they stay with you. And that's all right, that's just the way it is. Oh, look, that's a very complex question because it has so many different dimensions. It means a lot on a personal basis. Carrying on the Anzac tradition, my grandfather was in the Lancashire Regiment at Gallipoli. My father was a World War II officer. He was at Normandy +1. So I was the third generation in my family. So it meant a lot to be part of that tradition. I became a member of Melbourne Legacy when I left the army and was become part of that wonderful legacy World War II tradition. And then I'm a veteran in my own right with my own generation and very proud to be a part of that amongst the wonderful people that I've come across and got to know as a veteran with fellow veterans. Look, I'm very conscious of the responsibility that we have to keep the tradition alive. I think we have a tremendous responsibility to encourage younger people to be involved in Anzac Day. We do that very well here at the club. We're just starting to do as much as we can in that area. So and then I just enjoy Anzac Day for the sake of catching up with friends I made in Vietnam. We still meet together, we still march together and have lunch together, talk about all the stories together. So once again, it's at different levels. But it's so important that Anzac Day keeps going, and it's almost become a national day. Well, I think it is a national day. You could put it down as agony and ecstasy, because the reason I became involved with the Camberwell RSL is that I was president of the Tramways RSL when we went through a very painful schism, if you like. Some didn't want to come here and most of us did. So I ended up being president of the Tramways RSL after the split, and that was a very nasty, very painful period. And once again I found myself in a position of responsibility, and I actually went back to the way in which I ran the platoon as Transport NCO, which is one of a peacemaker, which is what I basically, that's my sort of natural default. Wasn't always the best thing to be at the time, but anyway, that's the way I ran it, or that's the way I carried out my role as president. And then we luckily joined forces with the old Camberwell, with Jeff Kennett and Ted Bailey, and wonderful people in the old Camberwell RSL. And here we are, over 12 months later, a really strong, vibrant sub-branch, and you've only got to look at what we're doing tonight. It's a real testimony to how far we've come as a club, and that's the ecstasy. It's wonderful being here now. So we've been through really tough times to get here, but we've arrived, and still a lot more work to do, obviously, but it's all been worth it. Well, once again, it means a lot. These last 2 or 3 years, it's sort of like being forged together in battle to some extent, and we've formed very, very close friendships, a close bond. But I'm a bit of a writer, so I tend to stand back a bit and view what's going on, and I really love to see what's going on. It's working very well. Well, look, I think in some ways it's sadly lacking to a larger extent in the community these days. So I think if we can show an example of what service means and a commitment to the community, that you don't have to be a veteran to have had that experience. I mean, everybody, every young child, every person can in some way give of themselves to something bigger than themselves, which is what service is all about. So I'm very keen that, we provide an example of what it means to put yourself above and beyond your own needs for a greater good.